Hey there, thank you for listening or watching Blood Moon Milk, the astrology show that comes out every new or full moon. I have a very special guest here with me today, the wonderful writer Sophie St. Thomas, the author of the book Reproductive Rites, The Real Life Witches and Witch Hunts, and the Centuries-Long Fight for Abortion. This is the book. I've been reading it. I can't get enough. Sophie, thank you so much for spending your afternoon with me. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you for having me.
So I think your book is really important, and I think it encompasses a lot of really interesting information, everything from the crocodile shit suppositories to that were, used for contraceptive aids back in ancient Egypt to more nuanced modern stuff that is still haunting us from the ancient Greek era. How did you get interested and how did the idea for the book come, like, how did that arrive in your mind? How did that hatch?
Oh God. I remember I had read somewhere about abortion doctors being persecuted for being witches. And that was really interesting to me because the word witch is totally, subjective. I mean, these days it's people, call themselves witches and it's on social media can be like really profitable, and is kind of seen like a good thing, an edgy thing, but that certainly was not always the case. And I became really fascinated more by how like that word had been used sort of for persecution. And I started just going down this rabbit hole about the history of the term witch and how it overlaps with abortion and reproductive rights. And then I kind of just put this pitch together and sent it off to my editor when Dobbs was leaked. But the story I really like to tell about this book was at a book launch party for a previous book of mine that I had done, something that was a lot more fun, like a fun, like more one of the fun books I did in the past. And this guy came up to me at the book party and he was like, and he asked me what I was working on. I said, oh, I'm working on like a book about the history of the term witch and abortion. And he was like, this was like a man, mind you, who like publicly really identifies as a liberal and I think thinks he's like a good progressive dude. But he was like, why would he was like, that's such a dark topic. He was like, why would the author of a book called Sex Witch be writing about abortion witchcraft? And I'm like, do you know like how like sex works, dude? But I it made me realize that I think that people, not everyone, but a lot of people see the idea of like sexuality and witchcraft as this really fun, sexy, trendy thing, but then kind of, like this, I guess the shadow side of that. I don't know if shadow is the right word, but it was just I became really determined. Speaking of astrology, I'm a Scorpio, so I am very driven by like revenge. If someone like like expresses like disdain or like questions me, it just makes me want to do it so much more. So that reaction like really egged me on to write a book that gets into I guess kind of the darker history of sex and witchcraft because Sex Witch, I wrote that book when I was younger and it is a really fun, like sexy book, but I wanted but that's not the whole story, right? And so reproductive rights is a really deep dive into the history of witchcraft and reproductive health and just showing, I think, the whole side of the story, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I think it's so I think it's really inspirational because it is taking that darker look at things. It's so easy to fall into the tropes of only looking at the positive side of things. And like there's that term going around now, toxic positivity, that's like only wanting to
Uh-huh.
talk about and identify with things that are good while completely ignoring, whatever tragedies might be also happening. So I really appreciate the work, but also it is so funny. Like you have such a funny way of phrasing things when you write that it's just really off the cuff and sort of irreverent, but you're doing it in a way that's like kind of lightening this very serious thing that has been people have been tortured and put to death over it, but you're like making light of it in a way that's sort of helping it to be digested. And I think that's such a incredibly unique skill as a writer to be able to take such dark, sort of murky, taboo subject matter and to like be able to find some levity in there to make it palatable. Because if it wasn't for that like sense of humor that's woven in throughout the book, I think it would be a much, much different book and much less
Yeah.
read. And I think this stuff kind of needs to be fun in order for people to be able to be open to it. You know what I mean?
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I do. I really appreciate that. I mean, that's just how it is in my head, to be honest with you. I have such an interest in darker topics, but you would go crazy if you didn't,
Mhm.
if you weren't able to look at it with a sense of humor.
So let's back up a little bit. Can you introduce yourself for our listeners? Who are you? If they're not familiar with your work already, how would you introduce yourself to somebody you're just meeting for the first time?
I'm an author. I'm a writer. I have done 6 nonfiction books. I actually am in the middle of a huge career shift where I'm switching to fiction. I've written 2 novels, but they haven't been published yet, and I don't even want to like talk about that yet. But I feel kind of in a crossroads of my career where I'm not necessarily sure how to introduce myself because
That's
my
okay.
previous work really doesn't, I guess, reflect what I'm doing right now. But reproductive rights is, yeah, it covers 4,000 years of history, um, the intersection of reproductive rights and witchcraft. And other than that, I'm a journalist. I'm just a writer. That's all people
Yeah.
really need to know, I think.
So how did you I guess like let's go back to when you decided to pursue writing as a career. How how are you able to like find the confidence to be like, okay, I want to write about witchcraft and I want to write about sex and I'm gonna just do it. Like, because I think that's pretty brave. You know, like I thought it was pretty inspiring.
Thank you. I don't know. I'm like missing like a self-conscious chip about things. I swear to you. I just I don't even think about it. I know I don't mean to like be like a cop out for your question, but I it's kind of always been like that for me. It's just what interests me. So I swear I'm just like missing this chip where things are like perceived as being taboo.
Oh, it's okay. I mean, I think that's
Yeah.
honest feedback, you know, and on it makes it sort of an innocent pursuit of the things that light you up, you know,
It really, I mean, no,
versus
it's just I only
just like
realize things are
self-worth.
really controversial to like people have like reactions about them, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Um, and and I live in New York. Most of my friends are astrologers or sex writers. Um, and I think that because all, all my friends and the environment that I live and breathe in is just not, I'm definitely a unique person, but because everyone I hang out with does very interesting and kind of offbeat things. I don't necessarily have the same, I don't know, my like basis for normal, I think is a little bit different.
Yeah, I can see that. The baseline
Yeah.
for what normal is in New York or Brooklyn is very different from the baseline of what normal is in the rural South, where, you know, Friday Night Lights is the norm, people going to watch.
Yeah, I mean, I went to high school in Virginia. I've spent a lot of time in Royal South, and Yeah, so I don't even know if that's a fair answer.
Well, so tell me a little bit about your childhood. What did you like what do you have like an early formative memory that you might be able to share that can sort of tap into where you first started to wonder about maybe witchcraft or the occult or uh the things that you write about?
Yeah, let's see. Well, I grew up in the Virgin Islands. I grew up in St. Thomas. I write under Sophie St. Thomas because when I moved, my dad still lives in the Virgin Islands, but when I was in high school, my mom moved to Virginia. So I moved with her and went to high school there. And when I moved there, there was just another Sophie in my class. And so people referred to me as like Sophie St. Thomas because had just moved from St. Thomas. And so when I needed like a pen name to write under, I just picked that on a whim. And now it stuck with me. Um, I mean, I've always been super fascinated with spirituality. It's been with me, as long as I can remember since I was, it's not just witchcraft. I've actually hate to like disappoint people. I'm actually like kind of moving a little bit away from the occult in my fiction. I've just my interest in spirituality and religion have I've done let's see 4 books about the occult now, and I've my interests have just been shifting.
So what are you interested in?
And
I mean, you don't have to go too
uh,
deep and give
I don't know. I want to talk about reproductive rights. I want to give that it's time first.
okay. Um,
Yeah.
so what is your favorite story of the book? Like if there's a takeaway for the book that people who are considering reading it, people who are interested in the history of abortion, not just in this country, in America, but globally. And
Yeah.
I think it's a wonderful read, but like what would your takeaway be for somebody who's might be on the fence about it? I think it's a great book. I think every woman should read it and it should be like and like on book lists everywhere, frankly, because I think it's really well
On
researched, really funny. And
someone who's on the fence about reading about the book.
yeah, like or like picking it up to purchase it to spend time with it. Like, what is your takeaway? Like the thing that you hope that somebody would get from the experience of reading the book?
I think what I kept coming back to with this book was that the people I wanted when I like came up with the idea for the book to be the good guys weren't always the good guys, and the bad guys weren't always the bad guys. It's such a complicated book, and I actually would love people who are unsure about the occult or don't even identify as a witch to read it. Because like I things like I think to outsiders, like the idea of for example, like Satanism is like super sexy and interesting. And like right now there's a dear friend of mine, Jex Blackmore, who I interviewed for the book. They are a very prominent satanic abortion activist, and they have done just incredible. I can't say enough positive things about them, like the work they've done for reproductive rights. But I'm researching it, and then I find out like, well, the Church of Satan, and like Anton LaVey is actually super, super against abortion. Like it actually looking at like kind of that this overlapping era in like American history, it turned out that like Ronald Reagan was more pro-choice than like Anton LaVey, and so that really, really threw me through a loop. Or then, and I am not, I'm have nothing good to say about Ronald Reagan. Like his handling of the AIDS crisis, I think is responsible for a huge number of deaths. But when I guess I pitched the idea for the book, one would think like, okay, the witches are all going to be really pro-choice, are going to be really fighting for abortion, and like these and the conservative powers are not, and that wasn't really how it turned out. Another huge character in the book is is Aleister Crowley, and he is, a huge people are obsessed with him, and I'm certainly not the first person to criticize him. But I still, before I had written this book, I mean, I have his books on my bookshelf. I go over to friends' houses who identify as witches, and they have his books on their bookshelves, and people think, okay, this guy invented sex magic. He must be, but he's just horrible, like horrible, horrible, horrible,
I
horrible.
have you heard the stories about him going out to the desert in Egypt with his like manservant
Yes.
trying to
Yeah, and he tortured and
oh,
berated that guy.
like basically
Um,
trying to like usher in a demonic possession so he could control the demon, but like it was this very long, involved ritual that he couldn't be fucked to finish. And so he
yeah,
like basically his life was ruined after that. Like his whole career just like cratered after that experience, which I think is kind of funny because he was
yeah,
all that great in my opinion, but certainly had some interesting ideas about how to get stuff done.
yeah. Um, yeah, he did. So I just so many occultists writing this book honestly turned out to like really gross me out, and to have these huge anti-abortion like misogynistic leanings to them. And and I guess I would recommend, I don't know, the book really like challenged the way I think about the occult, and the way I think about the word witch. And I guess I would hope that people would read it with like a very open and curious mind. But I sometimes like caution people a little bit, and I hope this doesn't sound like I don't want them to buy it, because I do want them to buy it. But when it was first coming out, there were so many people who were like, "Yay, I'm a witch! I can't wait to read this." And I was like, "I can't wait for you to read it either." But it is critical of the occult community.
Yeah.
It's not just a yeah,
No, but that's what's so good about it though, is that it feels very balanced. And
yeah,
the I love well, there's like a passage in here I love if I can read it. I
yeah, of course.
it. It should be okay. This is the part about in chapter 4, the colonial American real and hysterical chapter. So over the very same years, indigenous people were dying of exposure on the Trail of Tears. Their ghosts were already being hijacked for party tricks. Spiritualists said Native Americans, with their deep connections to nature, were better than others at crossing spiritual planes. To show up at the party of Victorian ladies who wanted to know if their husbands were cheating, they probably were, but leave the indigenous spirits out of it. I love that. And while
Yeah,
it has nothing to do with abortion specifically, I do think it illustrates a well-rounded approach to the many topics that you weave together in the book, along with your very sort of irreverent, off-the-cuff take on circumstances and that's, I hope like if anybody's listening and is curious about the book, go get it. I highly recommend it. But that's the kind of writing that you can expect throughout the book that makes such dense, sort of troubling subject matter for some to become digestible and even funny at times. And that I think that's real magic is like taking
yeah.
that is taboo and sort of difficult to digest and talk about and to make it entertaining and informative and enlightening. So job well done.
Thank you. Um, it kind of there's so many topics that people just I did so much research for this book,
Can you
and
tell me
I
about
have to say
our process? Because I was really curious. It's obvious you've done a ton of like a mountain of work to go into it. So what was that like?
it was kind of like a sculptor. I always think about a sculptor starting with a block of clay and carving it down, because I just read book after book after book after book, and I also did original interviews, and then I everything that was fascinating to me, I wrote down into like a giant document. And when you write fiction, the story, at least for me, every author and writer has a different process. But for me, when I'm writing fiction, the story really just starts to come alive and just almost telling itself. And the same thing happened with this book, even though this is nonfiction. There was just connections that, like I was researching the Salem witch trials because that's such a huge pinnacle, what we think about in like the history of witchcraft. And when I was reading that, I didn't necessarily even know that I was going to put that in the same chapter as Indigenous people and slavery in America. But then I found out and learned that there had been actual witch hunts happening on Indigenous people, and I didn't know that. I didn't know that the Salem witch trials were not like not the deadliest history, excuse me, not were not the deadliest witch hunts in North American history. Um, I mean, I could talk about this forever, but there's so many things, like you asked like about what I'm interested in now, and we can like talk about that in a second, but there's just so many things that people haven't researched. There's so many like quote unquote facts that people just hear, that are like passed down, like, oh, the Salem witch trials is like the deadliest witch trial in North American history. But then you start to do the research and this knowledge is available for everyone. And it's just not true. And that I'm a huge believer in the power of research and doing your own research and really looking into things. And even me, I had been like Allure magazine's astrologer for years and years and years, and I had written all
Oh,
these
that's
other
what
books
I
about
want.
witchcraft.
Just
What?
said, oh, that's the job I want, the magazine astrologer, but that's okay.
Oh, they're not doing it anymore. They just ended it,
Oh,
unfortunately. But yeah, but still, I'm still learning about. There is so much about witchcraft that I didn't know until I wrote this book.
yeah. What was your biggest like aha moment in your research? Like when all the things started kind of coming together for you and you're like, oh, this is central to the idea of this of what I'm trying to communicate. Because there's so many little vignettes and stories that are so powerful in there. I'm just curious like what it was for you that was maybe just the most impactful.
Um, I want to look up the exact details because I know what I want to say.
Okay. Yeah, take your time. I can edit stuff down a little bit.
Yeah. Um, Honestly, it probably comes down to George Tiller. He is an abortion doctor. Another topic that people have not researched enough, honestly, is Christianity, like especially with like Trump's America and these like Christian extremists. Like, I don't know. I like for research for this book and then for stuff I'm working on now, like actually spent a lot of time reading the Bible. I've like spent so much time studying the Bible. It's crazy. And it's just all like love and acceptance over and over and over. Jesus says nothing bad about gay people, never. He says nothing bad about abortion. And it's just like you turn the page and it's like love and accept one another. Like maybe the next page is the part in the Bible where everyone got like the anti-abortion or like the anti-gay rhetoric. And you flip the page and there's still nothing about that. It's just like love and accept one another. And so it's crazy to me that like George Tiller was an abortion doctor who was literally shot and murdered while he was attending church by a quote unquote like Christian who thought he was doing the Christian thing by murdering this doctor in church because the abortion doctor had been supposedly like killing children. And so like that just level of hypocrisy, like someone calling themselves a Christian and saying, well, this abortion doctor is like a baby killer, even though if we want to get into it, actually, the only actual mention of abortion in the Bible is a recipe for an abortion in the Old Testament.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I
Hmm.
wasn't
And,
aware of
and
that.
people,
I
yeah, and
mean,
people, because people don't know their like scripture. I mean, I sound like
no,
crazy, but it's
it's
true.
for me, and I think listeners of my show kind of know that I don't love organized religion. I am a big advocate for everybody having a spiritual connection to the universe. And like however you want to explore that is great. Like you go figure it out. If you want to go to a church, if you want to go to a synagogue or a temple or whatever, cool. Just don't like force other people to go do that stuff. And my
Yeah,
my like perspective is that I think many of the world religions have threads of wonderful wisdom that are like part of this tapestry. But I'm also somebody who's had inexplicable spiritual experiences that like I just can't explain
yeah.
other than like either I'm
No, me too.
completely psychotic, which I don't think I am, or like there are things that exist out there in other dimensions, or is like slightly off of this visible plane of reality that we experience and or maybe just next to and with, but don't see them or don't perceive them all the time. And so like I know that like as a from personal experience that evil is real, like spiritual evil, just as real as
Yeah,
like spiritual divinity. And I like when you were talking about the doctor getting shot in church, the phrase, the only lie the devil ever told was that he didn't exist. Like,
yeah. I believe that so much. I mean, I'm with you. To me, I've had so many instances in my life there is no doubt to me that like God is real. There's just things that have happened to me are crazy that make no sense, that there's so much going on we can't see. I think the biggest problem with organized religion is that I think it can really disconnect people from God because it puts a middle man, like going back to, what I think has been this total like corruption of Christianity. You get a preacher or a priest or a pastor in power, and congregants listen to that person like it's the word of God.
yeah.
And you get a bad person in that position of power, and it's just so easy to use it for manipulation and control. And I think organized religion can actually end up really taking people away from God by putting all these, this middleman in the middle, and it gets like completely corrupted. God, I could rant on about that forever.
Oh, I'm with you. And one of the earlier parts of your book, I don't have it bookmarked for easy reference, unfortunately, because I was just reading your book at that point. Um, but the earliest churches had brothels or like had sex workers.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
I love that fact. I don't think that enough people know that. So let's talk about
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, that was like in some of the early churches, it was like to encourage people to go to the churches. Um,
Come to church
I mean,
and then be absolved or something.
it's true. I mean, it honestly makes sense. There's so many sex workers in the like in the Bible, and not even in a negative way. So it honestly makes a lot of sense. Um, Religion has gotten so conservative lately. It's really upsetting to me.
Yeah. Well, I think so astrologically speaking, I don't know. I mean, you were an astrologer for a magazine, so you must have some
Yeah,
kind of frame of reference for, I mean, I don't know. What is your like do you maintain any kind of astrological practice for yourself or like just kind of know where the planets are, or what's going on, or when it comes to astrology, what do you do? Like other than you, I guess you don't write.
I I do somewhat. I mean, I'm aware of things, I like kind of pulled back a little bit from astrology because I felt like I was relying on it too much. I just went to a period where I was like every single day I was like checking like what was going on, and I needed just to kind of step back and be like, all right, I'm gonna let go. I'm just gonna like have faith, and things are gonna work out. I'm gonna trust in God's plan, and I just need to try having faith. But that was I'm a very, very like anxious and neurotic person. And there was just a point, and this is kind of about me like pulling away from a cult. And to me, it's all the same thing. It all leads back to God. So I don't think like one is like different versions are bad or good. It's just people have to find the best version that works for them. But I had just was in like a really anxious place, and I was just pulling so many tarot cards and like checking like the astrology of what was going on just constantly. And it got to the point where it kind of started to make my anxiety worse. So I actually recently have gotten back into tarot, and it's been really wonderful how it's happened. But there was just a point in my spirituality where it's like, I need, and witchcraft, and this is a super simplified version of it, but a lot, what part of what's so appealing to people is like, you can take control. You can like take control and kind of change things. You can do a candle spell for love or like this other ritual for money. And if you want to know what's going on, you can like check the stars, you can like pull tarot cards. And it got to like a specific point in my life where all that like trying to take control became really anxiety provoking and overwhelming for me. So I kind of did like a 180 and was like, not forever, but just for now, I'm just going to try like having faith in God and that things are going to work out for me. And I'm just going to like stop checking and like stop trying. But that's not because I think any of those things are bad. It was just because I'm a very like neurotic and compulsive person, and I felt like I had been overdoing it. That's a really, long-winded answer to about astrology, but yeah, I've kind of been stepping back from astrology, but it's not because I think it's bad at all.
I think I can understand where you're coming from in my own practice. I do a daily email newsletter that people subscribe to. It's like $8 a month.
Yeah,
And Monday through Friday, they get an email from me with the biggest transits of the day, the ones that are going to be the most impactful. So it's like some days are kind of quiet, kind of chill, like, the lunar days where there's just little lunar transits, not much going on. And then there's other days like, we just had two eclipses. Those are big deals.
yeah, I know.
And so like I go kind of ping pong back and forth from like providing that as a service and being like, okay, it is my job as an astrologer to understand what these movements mean and what they represent, and then translate
Yeah,
that information into something that is digestible and actionable for my audience, so that it can be consistent and useful. Um, but sometimes that just takes me out of I would almost say like the psychically connected spiritual side of it, because it's like I'm using my analytical mind instead of my feeling body to intuit the way the energy is
yeah,
flowing. And sometimes it's like I'll look at my ephemeris, and for those of you listening who aren't sure what an ephemeris is, it's basically just a chart that tells you where the planets are, and it's just a bunch of numbers and glyphs. But there are times when I just look at that and it's like, uh, you know, I'm dating myself, but like the sound like a fax machine used to make, that like, like that horrible
yeah,
noise. Like that's the noise that
yeah,
I
I do. It's okay.
like when I look at an ephemeris, and then it like all clicks, and I'm like, oh, and like it just is like this huge sort of like download of information. But then it's like I understand that, and I'm like trying to process that. But then at the same time, it's like, okay, well, I'm just one person, and I am just
Yeah,
one person with like the reach that I have, whatever that is. Um, and I I just kind of have to trust that like the people who are interested and feel resonant, like find it and connect with it. And try not to worry about it too much.
Yeah.
But
I
it,
mean, to at a certain point, worrying is just it's just you trying to control things. It's worrying doesn't like actually fix things, but it kind of tells you that it does. Worrying kind of feels active, but it's for me, it makes me just unproductive. So I'm just trying to do as little of it because there's so much to worry about. But
yeah, especially these, I
but
mean,
you were gonna say, weren't you gonna say something about like the astrology of religious conservatism?
oh, I mean, like, I think that we're in this transition phase where the old is really crumbling under its heft. Like, I was on a call with somebody earlier today, and they were like, "Yeah, it's like we're in the stages right before Rome actually burns. Like, we're at the end of an empire in a way." And I don't like, well, in many levels, I do think that is an accurate assessment. I don't think that it's like the end of the world for like as we know it in every single sense of the way. I think we are at the end of a long period of time that has been ruled by corruption and greed and darkness, and we're about to enter into a very different energy, I think, come next year. When we
What
have
shift do you what shift are you
um
watching for that?
I'm looking at the Saturn Neptune conjunction at 0 degrees of Aries. That's the thing that
Yeah.
motivates me. I've looked back at ephemeruses looking for another like a prior one between those
Uh-huh.
at 0 degrees of Aries. I haven't been able to find one for 9,000 years, which is
Wow. Wow.
which is
Wow.
like significant. I mean,
Yeah.
Saturn, Neptune, like Saturn is karmic choices and it is owning decisions. But it's in Aries, it's also active, it's warrior energy. But with Neptune there, it's like a warrior for the light, if that makes sense. It's like a warrior for
Uh-huh.
like the spirituality of the connection to like the divine connection we all have to the universe, to God, whatever. But like
Yeah.
it, I mean, I think we're gonna see a a sort of like a light switch go off, and we're gonna level up in some way spiritual. Like I feel like the energy that is going to sort of beam to us, when that happens is gonna be transformative. Like we've never lived through
Yeah.
that connection before. We've lived through Saturn and Aries, we've lived through Neptune and Aries, but the conjunction of the two starts a long cycle. Like those two planets don't conjunct very often, and when they do, it's always at a different degree. But the Aries point is like the most powerful degree in the whole zodiac.
When does that happen?
Um, I want to say it's February 22nd next year, but let me hold on. Um, Saturn conjunct Neptune. Yeah, February 20th, 2026. Um, and so yeah, we're less than a year away. And then this year is also really pretty spectacular in terms of astrological events because every single planet is shifting signs within a 12-month period. If we rewind back to Pluto moving into Aquarius in November, like if we look
Yeah.
at we're to November, like we've never, at least not that I know of, we've never lived through a single calendar year where all the planets, like all the outer planets change signs. Maybe
Wow.
one or two. And so that kind of tells me like we're on like in this disintegration period of like old things crumbling, um, and then the nodal axis is being in Virgo Pisces. So it's back to kind of where you're at. You're like, I just need to have faith. I just need to trust. Um, because
Uh-huh.
that's all what the North Node in Pisces is about, is just having faith and just
Yeah.
so I don't know where your
Interesting.
nodal axis are. I don't have your chart, but I would be willing to guess that that Pisces North Node is inspiring something somewhere, making some connection.
Yeah.
Especially if you,
I'll have to look. I haven't looked at my chart in a long time. It's like embarrassing to say.
oh, it's okay.
Um,
But especially if you're a
yeah,
Scorpio, I mean, water signs are harmonious and that
yeah.
can feel like a good push in a clear, or maybe not so clear direction, but like a real, emotional force that's welling up in there.
Yeah, maybe intense. Not, I don't know about clear, but intense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I just love your book so much. I hope that people pick it up, gift it to people, and I think especially now in this climate, with this administration, I think we need things that do exactly what your book does, which is it informs and it entertains. And
Thank you.
I think that it's really key to be able to kind of be able to do both. We are sadly our attention spans are sort of ruined by the internet and TikTok and YouTube videos, but I
Yeah.
I think it's really important uh, and inspiring work that you've done here. So I urge
Thank you.
to go pick up a coffee, give it to all your conservative relatives for Christmas.
That's so funny. Yeah. I
You know,
know that
stir the pot.
that book after that book after we finished, me and my editor, we were like going over, I think it was like the acknowledgement section, and there was like concern that something I wrote in the acknowledgements was like too woke. And then I was like, you guys, this is like a book about abortion and witches. Like there is no way someone could read through the entire thing and like be offended by the acknowledgements, you know. Um, so we'll see. I don't know. I don't honestly think this book is getting like shadow banned some on social media. I've
Really?
done so many posts about, yeah, I've done so many posts and my friends are like, I never saw that post.
I think social media has changed a lot since January.
Yeah,
TikTok, or is it going away again? I don't know. It seems like it might.
yeah, no one knows.
Yeah. I mean, is Trump going to save the day yet again? Like, and I say that with air quotes for those who aren't watching the video. The sarcasm is definitely there.
Yeah,
But yeah, I mean, like we do genuinely live in a majority state owned or observed place of social media at this point in this country, which is why I think it's important as an independent content producer. Like I work for myself, I'm an astrologer, I do this podcast, this is my job. I want to, I mean, I have a microscopic following, but it is the people show up like in a it takes
mm,
just like one or two people kind of talking about something to start to change the tide of things. And you just cannot give up. You have to just show up every day and do the best you can do at being you that day and following the things that light you up. And if it's writing about abortion and witchcraft one day and then switching to, I don't know what your novels are about, but something else that is, a rich playground for your imagination to cavort.
yeah. They all have spiritual themes.
Yeah.
I'm just so superstitious. I don't even want to talk about them
I
because
don't, yeah,
they're like we're still trying to figure out how to sell them, but
yeah.
it'll
I,
work out. It will work out.
I think, I mean, as somebody who has also I've written a novel and it has not been picked up by an agent yet. I will say yet because you just never know.
Yet.
Yeah. Um,
Yeah.
but I'm not gonna stop writing because that one hasn't gone anywhere yet. But I'll keep writing and keep doing
Yeah,
this.
you have to keep writing. I always tell myself like when once you put a book out on submission, whether it's for an agent or after you get an agent, then you have it's not like haven't sold it yet and you
Yeah.
have to try to sell the book. And that's so horrible and so stressful that you have to enjoy the writing process. That's really the best part of it.
Yeah.
And the more you enjoy the writing process, the better it will be. That really, really shines through. Um, so whenever I'm writing on a novel, I just remind myself this is the best part right now. This is why you do this. It's the writing. And the more you remind yourself that, the better the writing will be. And you just have to keep trying because the people that don't whose books don't sell are the people who stop trying. You know,
Yeah.
like I have one novel that I tried to sell with a former agent. I don't think that's going to sell. And to my credit, like I just wrote another novel, and it's some days it's absolute hell, but I have one of the reasons I have faith that it's going to work is because I just know that I'm not going to stop. And you know, and I do this. I have a day job. Like I haven't made any money on novels yet. Like this,
Publishing is very difficult.
I
At the end of
publishing is very, very difficult. And the writing is the one thing you can control. It's the best writing. I think writing is a spiritual practice. When I'm like when you're writing, sometimes I'm like the Holy Spirit is like coming through my fingers. I don't care how like crazy I sound. It's you know whatever you believe in, any type of like spirit. Like writing is a spiritual practice. And so, yeah, you were like anyone who's listening, if you like to write, you can't lose part of the writing. Um, and also, while you're sending it out to agents, or once you have an agent, you're sending it out to submission, it's really important to keep writing during that process. It's the only thing that will distract you.
yeah, that's a
Yeah,
good point. So do you have, as somebody who may have practiced, I don't know, some occult rituals in your history, have you, do you have any
yeah.
rituals you like to perform for good luck for the publishing gods to smile favorably upon your submissions? Anything that you like to do for,
No, no, I like gave up rituals and spell work because I did so much for my first book, and it just made me crazy. Um, I'm serious. So I it was an eclipse and I was like trying to do a candle spell and it was just too and I ended up throwing out the candle spell and I was like, I'm just gonna this is gonna work out. It's not gonna work out the way I think it's gonna work out, but I have faith that it's gonna work out. And so I just stopped. But that was because I'm telling you, like all the pulling tarot cards about it, all the spells, it was making me crazy. But that I really want to reiterate, that is my unique experience. I don't think it's bad. I think it's beautiful. And I think whether you're, you know, trying to have faith or you're doing your own spells, like it all leads back to God. And I think it in the end that is all the same thing. And you just have to find out what works for you. But to be honest to you, from I was doing so many spells and tarot readings, it was making me crazy. So I had to stop. But I always kind of do things pretty intense.
I imagine so. So you're a
Yeah.
Sun Scorpio. What are your big three? Like,
Scorpio, then my rising is Leo, and my moon is Virgo. So I'm a little all over the place.
okay. Well, no, it's not a bad thing though. Like it can bring
Yeah.
balance, you know, and Scorpio and Virgo work really well together. Especially
Yeah, they do.
if you want to write.
Yeah.
Well, how can people find you if they want to know more about you or your work? Where's the best place for them to connect with you?
I mean, I would love it if they just bought this book. I really want to sell more copies of this book.
Yeah.
Um, my social media account is at the Bowie Cat. I'm mostly just on Instagram. I have really been going on social media a lot less. Um, but so I'm mostly just on Instagram. I don't even sign on every day anymore. So if you want to follow me, that's great. But I would like rather you buy my book, honestly.
That's fair. That's
Yeah.
honest. You know, I think it's a great book.
Yeah.
It's definitely one that I'll be recommending to several people and gifting. So,
Thank
doing my
you.
part to support. Is there anything else you want to say before we wrap up about anything? Anything you've got going on or want to talk about? Can be anything you want.
No, I mean, I guess if you do follow me and I finally sell a novel, you can celebrate with me, but I don't know when that's going to happen. So for now, just support for reproductive rights would be wonderful. I mean, I poured like 2 years of my life into this book. It was so much work, but I couldn't, I'm so proud of it. I'm very proud of it.
It's awesome. I mean, it's like every chapter, like when I sat down to read it initially, I was like, great, this is going to be drudgery. And I couldn't have been more wrong about that
Oh, thank
initial
you.
impression. And it's like, I haven't quite finished it just yet, but I'm like kind of not wanting to finish it just yet either, because I'm like, what am I going to do with myself when I don't have this book to with? Um,
Yeah,
because I'm realizing that I'm savoring it. And I don't do that often. So thank you for that experience. Thank you for working so diligently on it. It's really fantastic. I hope more people discover it in time and it, becomes a cult classic overnight in 10 years or something. At the worst case, like, but I hope it has a
yeah,
long, productive life, is what I mean.
thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Well, thank you.
What are your top three before we go?
Oh, mine, I'm a Sagittarius sun, Libra moon, and Aquarius rising. But I do
Okay,
have
cool.
a stellium in Scorpio.
Oh,
Um,
wow, okay.
yeah, my Venus, Mercury, and Pluto are all conjunct, like in Scorpio. Um, and then my midheaven is in Scorpio. So I get along pretty well with Scorpio energy.
Yeah,
But it's like uh I can be friends with the intensity, but it is a lot.
yeah, it
It's
is a lot.
it's
That
the
is totally a lot.
most intense sign of the zodiac. Um,
Yeah, for sure.
More so like um, it's just it takes no prisoners, it's kind of
Mhm.
ruthless and demanding of itself and the people who it wants around. Like if you can't live up to those standards,
Yeah,
it's like, all right, bye. Like
yeah,
if you're slighted, or if somebody doesn't do what they say they're gonna do, or like, is it all underhanded? You see right through it. Like, there's
yeah,
no hiding anything from somebody with a lot of Scorpio energy. Um, it's it's always super psychic too. Like, you don't ever have to like
yeah, it's true.
fill in the blanks for a Scorpio person. They have to do it for other people. Like,
Yeah,
yeah, unfortunately, sometimes people don't want to hear it though. They're just not ready.
yeah. Well, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate you taking the time to talk about my book. And yeah, thank you so much.
It was entirely my pleasure. Please don't be a stranger. I'll let you know when I put this out. But it'll be the next week or two that it makes its way out to podcast land. But
Awesome. Thank you.
that was Sophie St. Thomas joining us to talk about her book, Reproductive Rites, the real life witches and witch hunts in the centuries long fight for abortion. And this is the cover, and you can get it online or wherever books are sold. All right, until next time, I wish you all the best the stars have to offer. Thanks for watching, listening, sharing the show with your friends. If you want to subscribe to the Daily Dose, my daily astrology email newsletter, head over to bloodmoonmilk.com and click on Daily Dose. All right, until next time, thank you so much.